Hello and welcome to the Generation Zero Weapon Encyclopedia. Today we're taking a look at the experimental rifle. Like all experimentals, you have a chance of getting it by finishing base assault missions, base defense missions, or by looting defeated rivals. Properties: artillery rifle. Damage and kinetic blast radius increase the further the projectile travels. Best suited for arcing shots at long ranges. Based on a powerful hunting rifle using .270 caliber rounds. Or so the game says. Although the experimental version of this rifle is so far removed from the regular version that you might as well treat it as a different weapon altogether. In terms of attachments, it only takes a rifle silencer. And in terms of ammo, the magazine can hold 3 rounds, with a total output of 21 rounds per minute. And while there is experimental 270 shock and medical ammo, the most effective ammo type in actual combat seems to be full metal jacket. Now, what really is this weapon? The best way I can describe it as is more of a grenade launcher, more so than a hunting rifle. A rifle grenade only rifle. Basically, it doesn't have any self-damage, not that it really matters since you're not gonna be using this at close combat. From what I managed to gather, the damage increase effect caps at around 100 meters, so you want to be shooting at targets that are at least that far away. On flat ground, the notches you get when you zoom in represent, from top to bottom, roughly speaking, 30 meters, 60 meters, 90 meters and 120 meters. In terms of tactics, when fighting machines, what you want to do is basically only use the 120 notch, and if you overshoot the machine, that means you are too close and you should step back. And if you undershoot the target, basically just eyeball it and hope for the best. Now, in terms of ups and downs, the biggest problem I have with this weapon is that it's not really worth the effort. It's one of the hardest weapons to use. The projectile has a lot of bullet drop, so it is very easy to undershoot or overshoot your target. The projectile is also very slow, and the rifle's fire rate and reload speed are also very low, all of which makes shooting fast moving targets very difficult, to the point where it's almost unusable against hunters and runners. It is of moderate use against tanks, but you have to avoid destroying their weapons, because if you do, they will charge you and get close to you to the point where the weapons become ineffective. It is, however, quite decent at taking down slow moving targets like harvesters or wolves, and it's also decent against static targets such as enemy bases. But even then, decent is as far as I can go. It takes around 10 full metal jacket shots to destroy a prototype harvester, and that is from a gun with a total output of around 20 rounds per minute, which is not bad, but when comparing it to the experimental PVG, which can take down the same target in one well-placed shot, all of a sudden it just doesn't sound as good. Against bases, it's not that bad. It does take quite a bit of ammo to deal any meaningful damage to a base, but 270 is not that hard to get or expensive to craft, and it also weighs very little, which is one of its biggest ups, but it is quite time consuming. It takes around 4 mags of soft point to take down walls and around 2 mags of full metal jacket. The ammo benefit is also less relevant given that level 3 bases spawn quite a few Phoenix runners, which are very likely to give you rockets for the M49, especially if you have one equipped. The experimental version of which remains my weapon of choice when it comes to attacking enemy bases, which has the added bonus that you can use from far closer, which is good because of those electric things in bases that act like EMPs and stun the enemies when you destroy them. So if you are close, you can take advantage of that quite easily, something you cannot do with the rifle. The rifle also has a decent chance of staggering machines, which is definitely a bonus, but not something that will save you. It's a nice bonus, but it does not redeem the weapon in my eyes. If you want to stagger something, you are better off using the experimental pump. It can even almost stun lock the Reaper, if you want to do that so your party can take it down easier. The experimental pump, that is, not the rifle. The rifle is kinda eh. Also, from my testing, the maximum range of the rifle seems to be on flat ground at around 300 meters, which is actually a downside. You can shoot the M49 at longer ranges than that. So, do I recommend it? Well, you should try it out at least once, especially if you don't have the experimental M49 yet. I do find it quite fun to roleplay as an artillery piece, but I cannot say that it is a good gun. It is very much an interesting gun. It is somewhat fun to use and it's nice and different. However, it simply lacks the damage output it needs, especially given all the downsides. If they ever increase the damage, this will become quite a nice gun. Until then, it does not have a place in my loadout.